Good afternoon and welcome to the May 16th regularly scheduled meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority. Will we have a roll call, please?
Authority members: Zagajanian.
Present.
Garpetian.
Here.
Kelly. Najarian.
Here.
Parazian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Chair Devine.
Here. Next item, please.
The agenda for the May 16, 2017 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Friday, May 12, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Madam Chair, also you have closed session items. You have one item for the authority. 2A is conference with real property negotiators, property location, approximately 1.56 acre authority owned property at 1116 Sonora Avenue and 1412, 1414, 1418, and 1422 5th Street, Glendale, California, and commonly referred to as 5th and Sonora site. Negotiating parties, Link Housing Corporation and National Community Renaissance of California. Agency negotiators attending closed session. Closed session are Scott Ochoa, Yasmin Beers, Mike Garcia, Jillian Van Meiden, Philip Lanzafan, Peter Zovak, and Mike Fortney. Instructions to negotiators will concern the price and terms for the lease of property. With that, you will have to actually, at the conclusion of this meeting, recess this meeting and not adjourn it. Next item on your agenda is approval of minutes.
Okay. Are there any corrections to the minutes, additions? Seeing none, the minutes will stand as approved.
Motion. I need a motion.
Moved. Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Minutes will stand as approved as submitted. Next item, please.
Oral communication. No cards were submitted for this portion.
Okay. Next item.
On the business agenda at 6A is City Attorney regarding legislative update for the housing legislation.
Okay. And we have.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have Peter Zovak come up to talk about one bill in particular that had raised some eyebrows in Sacramento, was piqued the curiosity of Council, Housing Authority Board, and then any other questions you may have. Peter?
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the Housing Authority Board, as you know, high housing costs, due to what a lot of experts are saying is the lack of production of homes being developed, has fueled a flood of new housing legislation at the state level. According to the State Housing and Community Development Department, California needed approximately 180,000 new homes to be built every year over the past decade to keep up with pace with population. Unfortunately, according to their estimates, only 80,000 new units have been built a year. And thus, for the 2025 projection, they're looking at a need for 1.8 million new homes. So it's as a result of the costs and this need for more housing that we've seen this response at the state level. And that response has been, at last count, approximately 130 new housing bills that have been proposed at the state level. On average, an average year for housing sees approximately 20 to 40 housing bills, so this is more than double. And of the 130 bills, approximately 90 have some kind of life. It's survived its initial stages, and it's either being circulated or put into a holding pattern at current count. The common thread on all the bills so far have been bills that increase funding for affordable housing, propose streamlining the approval process for home building projects, stepping up enforcement on housing laws, and or provide resident protection laws. And so that's been kind of the emphasis of the bills that have been produced. Some of the difficulties of the bills are that many require approval by 2/3 of the Assembly and Senate because they're related to taxes or revenue. So that's stalled a good number of them. And then for those that successfully have gone beyond that, another impediment to a degree has been the governor himself, who has vetoed in the past housing bills that add cost to the state budget. And a lot of it has been out of budget concerns. Lately, though, and he recently restated it in his budget May revise, is that he's also looking for some serious, what he's calling reform at the local level to eliminate the red tape and regulatory reform at the local level to allow more housing to be built. And so that's kind of been what the governor has given in terms of marching orders of what he will and will not approve. So this one bill that's kind of like the bill that can have the most immediate impact is AB 1505, and that's what I've been asked to kind of touch on real quick. AB 1505, and it's been sponsored by Assemblymember Richard Bloom out of Santa Monica, basically reinstates inclusionary zoning rules for rental units. If you recall, inclusionary zoning is a requirement that a number of cities had in place, where any new development had a mandatory requirement to provide some level of affordable housing at certain income levels in their development at no cost to the city in terms of density approvals or monetary consideration. Just it was a flat requirement. You're building, for example, 100 units, 10% need to be affordable at these levels. So that was in place for a while until a developer in Los Angeles by the name of Palmer challenged that and said it was violating an existing law in place called Costa-Hawkins, which came about in response to rent control. So Costa-Hawkins requires that no new rental unit or no rental housing built after 1995 can be subject to rent control. So this developer then took a look at inclusionary zoning and said, well, wait a minute, this is a form of rent control, took it to court and won, and then that stayed all inclusionary rental housing requirements that cities had. It worked its way through the court system, and recently, I want to say it was over the summer, that the appellate court gave a final ruling and said that it is not a form of rent control. It's not a violation of Costa-Hawkins, so it's okay to implement. AB 1505, even though a court has come out and said it's okay to do this, the legislature feels that it's important to codify it into law because I think they feel that a lot of cities have said that they want that extra layer of protection before just randomly bringing back inclusionary zoning. And at the same time, it's interesting in that the governor had various versions of this bill before him previously, and he elected not to assign them because he felt that he wanted to have those court cases proceed and be determined and ruled upon in court before he would eventually sign something to that. So now is the case for that, and it's been passed out of the Assembly. It's currently with the Senate, and there's two things that could happen. You can either progress quickly through the Senate and be completed by the end of the year, being that it's really a bill that's gone along party lines, and so it's the same party controlling both the Assembly and the Senate. Or it could be held up to kind of a quirk in the system, maybe in that the Senate might have it ready to act upon, but they may not act upon something until they see if the Assembly is acting upon some bills that they've sent down to them. So it's kind of a who might blink first. But if and when it does pass and is signed by the governor, it's something we're going to be speaking about as part of the 8-point strategy. And again, it's a pretty effective tool and could be implemented pretty quickly and develop units pretty quickly at no extra cost to the Housing Authority. So it's something we're tracking and we plan on bringing back when we have that strategy discussion later on the end of summer. There are other bills that are out there, but as I said before, they call for some type of new revenue to be created. Some have to do with taxes. There's one unique one out there that is looking to eliminate the state income tax deduction that people can take on vacation homes and then applying that revenue to an affordable housing development pot that the state would control.
Okay. Comment?
Can you elaborate on the language of that bill that is being proposed, 1505?
It codifies the court's ruling that inclusionary zoning is not a violation of Costa-Hawkins.
But as far as the terms or the details as to what percentage of the
That's all up to each individual agency to come back with and determine what percentages they might feel right. So that would be the discussion we would have over the long term as to what, if this is something that the authority would want to consider, then what percentages would those be?
And the developer that went to court and won, when was that?
I want to say it was challenged probably about 7-8 years ago.
It was probably challenged before 2009. The Palmer decision, that's the Published Court of Appeal decision, was rendered in 2009. So since 2009, we have not been able to charge impose inclusionary housing on rental projects.
No agency has been able to do that.
Well, some agencies have, but they're not supposed to.
Correct.
So before that, we had a chance to impose inclusionary housing, and we decided not to? Or
we were doing it in the former redevelopment project, San Fernando project area.
Only in San Fernando project area, nowhere else, not downtown, no other multi-residential projects.
That was a policy decision of the council at the time.
Got it. Okay.
So with this bill, we can ask for it or demand it in whatever developments come up the pipe.
Correct, and then you can set the parameters as to whether it's specific to an area, if it's citywide, would it include rental, would it include ownership, would you want to implement some type of in lieu fee that the developer would pay instead of building the units, then just providing that fee payment to the city and the housing authority would take care of the eventual development of that?
But we don't have to offer an incentive if they do that.
No, it's simply kind of a cost of doing business within the town.
Councilmember Najarian?
So at some point, though, we run the risk of violating their Fourth Amendment rights of a taking. I mean, you can't say we're going to require 50% inclusionary housing. He's going to say, look, this is my land. You can't force me to do this. Right. I mean, so I'm not sure there's a number out there.
The second case that Peter was talking about, that was actually a United States Supreme Court case ruling that having an inclusionary program is not a taking. Obviously, it's got to be within reason. And so if we were to follow basically what we've been doing before, which is what San Jose had, which is basically a 15% requirement, 9 and 6, 9 for low, or 9 for very low, and 6 for low, in terms of percentages, you're likely going to have a takings claim.
And then, as a senior member of the Housing Authority, Glendale has not had a very good history of charging the appropriate in lieu fees for the inclusionary housing. We were charging something ridiculously low in our redevelopment areas, which was a joke that, you know, there's no way that the idea is the developer would pay this to the city and the city would be able to build another housing unit somewhere else. And it was about 50% of what the actual cost was. I mean, it was pathetic. So we don't have a great history looking back as to charging enough in lieu fees to create that extra housing. And that's something that we were just willing, some on the authority and the city. I don't think anyone else was. I think you were here, Peter, at that.
For the discussion, I remember
this was like
very
2005,
clearly, yes.
2006.
I'd say even earlier than that.
I think part of it was by policy, by design.
It was
One
just
to
a joke.
incentivize.
I mean, so part of our lack of housing, I think, can be traced back to those very modest in lieu fees that we were charging, which were not reflecting the true cost of adding an additional unit to the market. So but that was then. This is now.
The policy question that
Didn't
council
set a precedent, but we are looking at each case individually at this point.
And I think you will have to look to that end at kind of the time arc that you're contemplating, because what the council sensibilities were in the early 2000s obviously aren't the same realities that we deal with now. And so what might have been seen as unreasonable then is totally reasonable now because things change. And so truly, you're going to get to make land use policy if this bill passes and if you adopt a program that would allow inclusionary housing, because to the extent that you put in place a 15% rule and leverage the power of the private market to build a lot of housing, it's going to impact what that land is worth. And so all of you will have to have a very clear understanding about what that means to those housing prices, those land prices for folks who are in the development business.
Right. And when was the downtown specific plan passed?
2006 it was adopted.
So it was before 2009, and at that time you could have included the inclusionary housing within our downtown. We had this council had the power to include the inclusionary housing within our downtown developments, and we are not short in housing. We are short in affordable housing.
Yeah, I think
so. We built 4,000 to 5,000 units, 4,200 units, and not one. Maybe let me rephrase that. Maybe 50. How many units did we have affordable within all these projects?
Well,
the ones prior to 2009, probably not too many.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the important thing is the statement that Mr. Ochoa made. Back then, there was a completely different set of circumstances. And you are correct, Mr. Najarian. It was 50%. At the time, the Housing Authority said, let's cut it in half. Let's reduce it as an incentive. Because back when we did this in the early aughts, there was no housing that was taking place. We're in a much different world today where there is a lot of housing, and you want to take advantage and leverage the private investment that's taking place. And you say, I want you to put in that full unit, whether it's, I think it was $34,000 a square foot, $34.50 a square foot, and we reduced it to $17.25 or something. What didn't happen, because all of these court cases were being decided, is we never went back and said, okay, we've primed the pump, we've got this catalyst, now we need to adjust that.
Did you invent that
Did you
term?
say prime the
Sorry, I did.
Did you invent that term?
I did. Just
Very
now.
creative.
And to your point, Mr. Garpetian, when the redevelopment project area was adopted in downtown, 1972, there was no inclusionary requirement in redevelopment law. In 1992, when we adopted the San Fernando Road project area, there was. So redevelopment project areas were required to have inclusionary housing. At the time, again, a policy decision was made that said, we'll build affordable housing. And in fact, we had quite a bank of affordable housing that we could offer a subsidy to try and prime that pump and get housing to take place. And then, of course, the whole house of cards fell apart with Palmer.
Yeah, I wasn't referring to redevelopment area. I was referring to downtown specific plan. And also, even with the redevelopment area, we only had the inclusionary housing in San Fernando corridor, not the rest of the redevelopment area was not only in San Fernando area, San Fernando corridor. And San Fernando corridor overall is not a very desirable place to live right across the street from railroad tracks. And you have the inclusionary housing or 50%, even if you made it 25%, nobody would have built there because it didn't pencil out. But the need for affordable housing or the desire to provide more affordable housing overall was not there. We built some housing, of course we did. But overall, this is I think a very important issue that we need to sit down and discuss again, and we'll see where does this bill go and go from there.
Do we know if we have support on this bill from our Assembly representative?
I believe we do. We do. There really isn't a concern of it passing out of the Senate. It's just a matter of timing, is what it is.
All right.
And getting the governor to sign it.
Yeah, the governor to sign will be the thing.
The governor signs it.
The governor has
He sees
his
more important.
perspective. He wants a C done, which is the mandating of really eliminating a lot of discretionary control at the local level, things that we really don't wrestle with, but other cities do, but they're taking, once again, a one-size-fits-all approach. And he it wouldn't be the first time that he applies pressure and withholds support for this until he were to get what he wants by way of what he would call streamlining.
Yeah. It would be difficult to do that, though, because this meets all the criteria for him. No state revenue is needed, no expense at the state level. It codifies the rule of the state. Why not sign it? But crazier things have happened.
Your lips to God's ears, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Zovak, very much. Any other comments? Okay. Next item, please.
No other items?
I'm sorry?
You may recess to closed session.
Staff comments? I have a comment. This last weekend, well, actually the whole week was National Women's Build Week, and I was invited to Pasadena by Habitat for Humanity to take part in their Women's Build Day at the Desiderio project. It's right under the Colorado Bridge. I'm sure if you look over when you're driving the freeway, if you look down, you can see all the houses. And, when we did the Kenwood project, we had a women's build at the Kenwood project. And I remember when I was on the commission and we raised funds for that women's build. So I was really proud to be asked to go over there and speak. And there were about 50 people there working, volunteers, mostly women. So it was pretty exciting to see all of them. And the first thing one of them said to me was, "Did you want to use the nail gun?" And I'm going, no, that's not quite for me. But anyway, it just got me really excited about the Lomita project. And I know that should be coming back, groundbreaking, hopefully in the summer. And so we can get another Habitat for Humanity project going in our city. Because it truly is a fabulous affordable housing project to have anywhere. And I was proud to say everybody was very impressed when I said that Lomita will be our 9th build. So that's more than most. So I just wanted to to mention that today. So with the no other items, we will recess to closed session.